Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Just to kick off, could we see a show of hands for how many people in the audience meditate or have meditated?
Wow.
This is almost everyone. So this is the perfect talk for you today. Over time, meditation has really become much more accepted as a means for becoming happier, managing stress, becoming more compassionate. It would be really terrific to hear from you, Rich, about why you think meditation is a valuable and important practice and how it fits into your life right now.
Yeah, I personally believe that there's nothing kind of more important than kind of looking after the health of your mind. I think it's the thing that we experience absolutely everything through. It kind of determines our relationships, our perspective on life, and I think very few of us actually spend the proper amount of time looking after it. And I think that meditation is a really useful tool that can kind of help us maintain a healthy kind of lifestyle. I think the problem is a lot of people tend to want to fix something when they've kind of hit the end of the road. And I'm really passionate about prevention and how can you prepare yourself for when life's ups and downs actually come? Because we're not going to stop that. Life is going to happen to us in all of its glory, but sometimes it is very difficult. And when those challenging times come to us, I think if we can prepare ourselves in the best possible way, then we've got a better chance of moving through it in a more kind of skillful manner. So I'm like incredibly passionate about it. For me, it's the kind of center of everything I do. So, I do it every single day. I feel that everything from my life kind of comes from that practice, and has been for the last 10 years since I first did it with Andy.
I think what's so amazing is now Headspace has 24 million downloads since you were founded in 2010.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, you've built a science team at Headspace that's doing new research to understand some of the benefits.
Yeah.
What are you finding in some of the new research and what is standing out to you?
Yeah, well, I think we've been actually working on science ever since we kind of first launched it back in 2010. And so we've been working on some of these studies for, up to 5 years. I think the other thing just to say is that I do think we're still very, very early in the meditation and science, but there are thousands of papers. Some of them are better than others, to be honest. I still don't think we've had the really large-scale studies that we need to really prove out the effectiveness of it. However, we've had a couple of really interesting studies recently, one with Northwestern, an aggression study. And it was actually found that people that use Headspace, it was 3 weeks, and they used Headspace for 3 weeks. And there's a pre-validated aggression kind of study. Like, we didn't come up with this. This sounds like a very cruel thing, just to warn you. We didn't come up with it. It was already been created by scientists. But they basically get someone to prepare their life story and dreams, and they present it as a speech to an actor that's sitting across from them, and they deliver it with passion. And the actor kind of just said it's rubbish, they could never deliver it, it's a terrible, how could you ever think that you could pull that off? And then the person that's given that speech has the opportunity to create a food mixture for them made up of hot sauce, lemon juice, or chocolate syrup. And depending on the amount of hot sauce that the person gives to that person that's just dashed their dreams, you can work out how aggressive they are. And from the control and the people that use Headspace, they were 58% less aggressive than the control. And obviously that's a small-scale study, but I think that's really interesting. I think the other study that we saw was around compassion, where, again, they do a setup with a control and same 3 weeks with Headspace, where they have a waiting room, and there's no chairs in the waiting room, and an actor comes in on crutches, and it's a test to see kind of how many people get up to give the person on crutches a seat. And again, it's a pre-validated kind of science study, and people that use Headspace were 23% more likely to give up their seat than the control. And so if you think about aggression and compassion, in the world that we live in today, in a world that is incredibly divided and that seems to be getting more angry, if you spend any time on Twitter, you'll understand how angry the world is. I think they're two really awesome indicators that something like Headspace could play a role in kind of reducing or increasing those things, I think is pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. And we're really in a phase right now where, as a culture and society, we're talking a lot more about having compassionate workplaces and workplaces where people treat each other the right way. How do you see meditation playing into company culture, and how have you at Headspace been, building for your B2B service?
Yeah, so we kind of we had a couple of failed attempts at B2B early on when we were really young and we didn't have a lot of revenue. We bootstrapped it for pretty much 5 years, and so we kind of did chase some dollars early on, and there was a lot of B2B inquiries, and Google was actually one of our first was our first kind of big client. And just for focus, we just wanted to build a consumer product that people loved and that they would use. But over time, I think as trends have changed, and I think as companies, like you say, Kathleen, have kind of become aware that it is really important to look after the health of your employees if they're going to be productive. I think we've got 200 clients now, and we don't have a B2B product. It literally is just our consumer product. We're building one, don't worry. But at the moment, it doesn't exist. And I think that just shows, and most of that, I'd say 90% of that's been incoming. So I just think there's an incredible appetite for creating a more balanced lifestyle for folks. I just think that if we push as hard as we've pushed historically on our employees and on our team, I just don't think you can sustain that over the long term. And I think meditation is an incredible tool for helping manage that. And that's what we're kind of seeing play out.
And one of the things I think is so interesting about your story is just the huge range of jobs you've had in the past. I think you worked as an acupuncturist at one point.
I did.
And you marketed Axe deodorant.
I did.
And then stumbled into meditation somehow. So could you tell us a little bit about how that journey happened?
Well, I feel like it's karmic payback for all those ads that I created for teenage boys spraying, smelly water on them. Yeah, I started off in a career in advertising, and I kind of did everything there, from strategy to creative. I ended up running all of the new business and their brand invention lab, which was kind of an incubator where we were kind of coming up with brands from scratch. And when I was about 25, and I just had a really bad kind of experience and burnt out. And, I think I had some from a mental health point of view, I was not in a good space, and I was struggling to get on public transport. I was struggling to go outside, became pretty agoraphobic, and I'd gone from a position where I was presenting in front of people, and it'd never been a problem, and it kind of got progressively worse. And I was getting acupuncture at the time, and my acupuncturist said, "Have you ever thought about being an acupuncturist?" And I was like, "No, I've never considered that." He said, "I think you'd be a good acupuncturist. I've got a course starting in a week. Would you be interested?" So I'd got a big promotion at my job on the Friday, and I quit on the Monday and became an acupuncturist. And I think, look, it sounds like a crazy move, but I knew I didn't want to do that anymore, and I knew it wasn't fulfilling me. And it was an incredible opportunity, actually. I was studying 3 days a week. I was on a term schedule, so I had lots of holidays to pursue other things that I was passionate about. And weirdly, where I was learning acupuncture, Andy was teaching meditation, but we never met. So for a whole year while I was studying, we never met, but we'd been crossing in the halls. And it wasn't until a friend introduced us that we kind of met. But I think the whole Headspace journey, and it was very organic. I met him because I was desperate, and I would have done anything to not feel the way that I did. And meditation kind of helped me. Andy was my teacher, then he became my best friend, then he became my business partner. It really was in that kind of order. And it was about a 6 to 12 month period of getting to the point where we were like, okay, this could be something interesting.
And for those who aren't familiar, Andy Puttycombe is the voice behind the Headspace app and does all of the recordings, so the very soothing person that you hear when you open the app.
Yeah, he used to be a Buddhist monk. We're a very normal business kind of co-founder relationship, so yeah.
And so you moved into the CEO role about a year ago now.
I did.
And the company is now nearly 200 employees.
That's correct, yeah.
So what has this transition been like into the CEO role?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of hellish, to be honest, if I'm being completely honest. It was, our current CFO, Sean, came to us at the end of 2016. He was in the CEO seat, and he came to Andy and he said, look, I love you guys, I love this mission, I want to do anything I can to help, but this is not the right job for me, and I think I'll be better suited in the CFO seat. And Jeff Weiner is an investor and an advisor at Headspace, and a close friend for Andy and I. And so we went up to go and see him. We were kind of hoping that he was going to give us a list of CEOs that we could go and hit up, because between the three of us, between Sean, Andy, and myself, we decided that we wanted to kind of get an external CEO in, because it was never like. It's never been my dream to be a CEO. I've always been very passionate about what we do and very mission driven, but it's never been my dream to be a business person, is the truth. And I never kind of saw myself in that role. Although Andy and I did it early on, I think it's different when it's smaller. And then we were waiting for this list, and Jeff kind of said, well, before you make this decision, this will be like the biggest decision that the company will ever make. And I just don't understand. And he just pointed at me and said, I don't understand why you're not CEO. And I was like, well, I don't think I could be CEO. And he said, why? And I gave him all these reasons, and he was like, no, I'm not buying it. That's not true. That's not right. And he said, look, I want you to go away and frame the decision in this way, which I just thought was a brilliant way of framing it. It's like, what does the company need to be successful? Are you the right person to deliver those things? Most importantly, do you want to do it? That was a big thing. And then the fourth thing is that if you are going to do it, what are you going to put around you from a personal perspective to sustain it? Because you've been doing this a number of years, it's high stress, it's a long game, not a short game. So is that more retreats with Andy? Is that more time with your wife? What is it that you need to put around you to kind of sustain it? And, Andy and I went away for a week on a retreat and kind of answered those questions and decided that I should kind of come back into it. But I was very reluctant. I think if Jeff hadn't told me that he thought I could do it, I'm not sure I would have believed it. And the first 6 months were hell, if I'm being honest. It was really, really difficult transition. And I felt very out of my depth in every single area. I feel more confident as time's gone on, and as I've kind of got wins and things have happened. But I found it a tremendously difficult kind of challenge. And I don't think I would be able to do it unless I was so passionate about what we're doing. If I didn't have that personal connection to it, I'm just like, why would you do it? It's a really hard thing. So I think you have to, for me anyway, just personally speaking, I think you have to have that heart connection with what you're kind of putting out in the world, personally.
What would be your advice to entrepreneurs who are maybe pushing through a really tough time at their company or getting started? It's such a demanding role. What do you think people can do to kind of support themselves?
I think I think the most important thing is to have, two things. One, to have an incredible network of people around you that can support you and give you honest feedback outside of your actual role. I've been incredibly lucky with mentors like Jeff and a bunch of different. I've probably got 10 or 15 people that are around me that have got way more experience than me that I can ring up for very different things. I've got people that are really good on people stuff. I've got people that are really good on vision and mission and objectives and priorities. I've got different people that I go to for different things, and I think that's incredibly important to get perspective. And sometimes I just need someone to tell me that I'm doing okay. I think I think when things go wrong, or when your team are putting pressure on you, or there is pressure on you, I can feel like I'm doing a terrible job. How am I doing this right? Is this normal? So I think to have that outside perspective is very important. I've also got an incredibly supportive wife who I really do believe that the two of us are in this, and I feel that we kind of do it together, because when I come home and I feel like that, and she tells me that she still loves me and that I'm not a horrible human, that's very, very useful in those times. So that kind of outside perspective. I think the other thing is incredibly important, is to create some kind of practice or routine that allows you to gain greater self-awareness of yourself and for me, that is kind of, for me, it's around meditation. It's around a kind of clean lifestyle. Like I don't drink, I don't take drugs. Like I have a very kind of clean approach to the way I live my life, which works for me. That wouldn't work for everyone, but for me, I've worked out what are the ingredients that make me feel able to do it. And that's meditation, exercise, eating well, and kind of having good people around me. So for me, that was what sustains me. So that would be my biggest advice. For work out what your version of that is. It might not be the same as mine, but for me, that's what works.
Yeah, those are great tips. I'm curious too, we live in a time where we're tied to our smartphones, and it's the source of, in some cases, addiction. We spend so much time on social media and other apps. What are some ways that you think, as a society, we could have a healthier relationship with our devices and technology?
Yeah, I think about this a lot because I wonder whether I'm part of the problem and like what we're making. I hope not. I don't think we are, but I do reflect on that a lot. I wonder whether we will look back on technology in this time that we're at now in the same way that we look at cigarettes now and go, what are we doing? Like, we are insane. And I do think there will be a bit of that, and I think you're starting to see the backlash against like some of the bigger companies kind of asking these questions of like how we're building products, and is kind of ultimate engagement at all times the right thing that we should kind of be thinking about. And as all people that are building, I'd imagine all you lot out there are thinking about the products and the services that you're involved with. I do think that's a really important question for us all to consider. I think also that I'm a big optimist though, and I do think that we're just at the start of the pendulum swing. Like I just don't think we've worked out, or we haven't written the rule book yet. And I think that we need to work out a way that we can build practices for ourselves to use them in a more kind of mindful way. Like there's a couple of things that I've done that have made a massive, massive difference. Like I don't have email on my phone. I don't have any notifications on my phone. And that for me has been a game changer. It was, I would imagine it's like coming off drugs for a little bit, to be honest with you, at the start. But over time, that has been incredibly useful. And I think it means that when I'm with my wife, when I'm with my friends, like I'm just with my wife and I'm with my friends, I'm not kind of constantly getting pinged by things. So I think look, if you look at a phone, it's just plastic metal. It's just plastic metal and glass. Like on it, by itself, it's actually not a big problem. It's our relationship to it. And so I think we have to like redefine it. I do think that as brands, as products, as services, like we have a role to play in that. But I also think it's like a personal responsibility thing. So I'm kind of hopeful that we're going to work out ways to use it. And I hope that the products and services that we're going to create as well will promote health and happiness more. Mm-hmm. So I think those things combined will shift over time.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, as you think about the next year and then the next 5 years for Headspace, where are you hoping that the company goes, and what's the role that you hope meditation plays in our culture more broadly?
Yeah, I think like our mission's always been the same, which is like how do we improve the health and happiness of the world, and I've always loved that because I don't think it ever runs out. Like I'm not sure you get to a point where you're like, oh, the world is as healthy and happy as it can be. Like I think you can always kind of chip away at that. And we've always seen it as broader than just meditation. And so, we are going to start to look at other verticals and other areas beyond kind of meditation. And, my hope is that Headspace can, serve you up the perfect piece of content or experience in that moment that allows you to kind of become healthier and happier. That's kind of what we're trying to get to create like highly personalized content experiences that are relevant to you right then and there. So we're kind of that's what we're building at the moment. And look, on the meditation side, I think the conversation has already changed in that I don't think you feel like you have to convince people so much. I think people are willing to try it. I think the really hard thing is like how do we create sustainable kind of habits that last over a long time? Because meditation is like a hard practice. Which is why we have to think, for us at least as a company, we have to think beyond guided meditation. And that's all of our effort at the moment is thinking about, okay, how can we create a product and a service that can sustain you throughout your life? So that's how That's how we think about it.
Yeah, I think it's so intriguing that Headspace, caters towards children, athletes, people who are having trouble sleeping, and so I think it's going to be really interesting to see this trend in personalization over time.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Richard. It's so great to chat with you.
Thank you.